Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to the Plant Powered Dad Hour. My name is Corey from Lean Green Dad, and that right there is plant-based Gabriel Miller. What's up, Gabriel?
Hey, just another busy week. You know, it's as plant powered dads. It's never there's never anything dull happening around the home, and so just loving life and busy on the farm, busy in the office, busy in the kitchen, just kind of up with everything.
Busy at home, which is
That's
awesome.
right. That's right. Yeah.
That's what it's all about. We're all busy at home right now, and I know that there's been a couple episodes out there. We're now in season 2. If you haven't heard the end of season 1, it was just released not too long ago, and so season 2 is here. We're a couple episodes in now, and we're so honored to have you listening, watching, and with us here on the Plant Power Dad Hour. So
That's right.
we'll keep bringing the goods as best we can. What do we usually start with, friend? We usually start with what we've eaten, yeah?
That's right. And you normally, yours is pretty simple, toast. So should I just go ahead after we just assume you had toast and then I'll just go into what I ate, or is there something different today?
Toast days are gone. I'm out of the toast phase. I'm telling you, I'm having some good meals these days. But you tell me, what did you start off with today, or what did you have for lunch?
So kind of getting into what we're going to talk about today, and I'm not going to dive into it, but last night we had, I had harvested, I don't know, like a dozen eggplants, probably 5 pounds of okra, and then what else? And then 4 or 5 summer squash. And so I brought in some onion, which I have onions stored inside now that we grow out on the farm. Sauteed some onions up in my cast iron with some vegetable broth, then tossed in the okra. I sliced up the okra, sliced up the summer squash, sliced and diced the eggplant, put it in the pot, covered it, let that simmer away, kind of stewed a little bit. I actually poured some homemade tomato sauce from the farm as well.
Wow.
Put that in there with some seasonings, some spices, seasonings, and then ended up kind of letting that stew for about 30, 40 minutes. So it kind of really got stewed there. And then we had rice cooked in the Instant Pot, kind of another hint to what we're going to talk about today. And then I put that over there. And then we had some bread frozen in the freezer, some organic sourdough loaf. Kind of hint to another thing we're going to talk about today. Frozen in the freezer, popped that into our air fryer, toaster oven, did that. So once that was done, took about 10 minutes, had rice on a bed of rice with our okra, squash, eggplant kind of stew, tomato stew on top, and then had some bread to dip it in. And it was fantastic.
Oh my God.
That was last night. Excuse me. That was last night. And then this morning, I kind of just left it out on the stovetop, kind of just went to bed, left it on the stovetop. So it didn't have any rice in it at the time, and it was kind of still had some liquid to it. So I put another cup or 2 of liquid water in there, and I put 2 cups of rice, set it on low, covered it, and then forgot about it, kind of hinting to another thing today, and forgot about it until I did that at like 8, and then opened it up at 11:30. And rice was cooked, food was great. There was a nice crispy layer at the bottom of the cast iron, and that was a wonderful lunch, wonderful dinner, and all pretty much done with just one in like, just the time it took to chop everything and turn the stove on.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Well, today I had a celebratory meal, Gabriel. I I had a meatless meatball sub.
Okay.
And, that meatless meatball sub consisted
made with plant-based Gabriel's Easy Vegan 3-2-1 bean balls.
I did not make bean balls, although I do have a bean ball recipe that I put together as well. It's the Big Game bean ball sub. And so no, I did not use those. I used store-bought frozen plant-based, I will say vegan meatballs.
Okay.
And some pasta sauce. And so I had a nice it was a vegan French roll. And it was a really good meal. I really liked it a lot. Just really enjoyed it. And so,
well, I hope you enjoyed it, because it's a celebratory meal. So you won't have another one in about a month. So I hope it was good.
It's true though. It really is true, because those are hefty. Those are really hefty. So yeah, they sit with you for a little bit, and give you that full feeling for sure. But definitely few and far between. So. But I was happy. I enjoyed it, and that was my lunch. And today, folks, we're going to get right into our topic. We're talking about 10 time-saving kitchen hacks that you can do for you and your plant-based family. And we're going to kind of go back and forth. Gabriel and I talked for a few minutes before we got started, as we always do, to just kind of
do a little virtual ping pong, back and forth, back and forth.
It's true. It's true. And we're just bouncing ideas off each other. So this is what we've got. We're always thinking of ideas and how we can help you guys. And if you could see him, guys, if you're listening on the podcast, he's literally pulled up a little ping pong net. I don't know what you have that.
It's a desk-sized ping pong set. So
you and Dr. Miller play ping pong every
now?
No,
I'm teaching Bridget. The basics of table tennis. So
there you go. There you go. So I'm going to get right into one of our first ones. And Gabriel's and I are going to be slightly different, right? Because my family, does teeter into the vegan world, although I am, what you want to call, I don't know, I always say 95% whole food, plant-based. Mm-hmm. My family does, I'd say they're a little bit more 70-30, 70% whole food, 30% vegan. And that's okay. It's okay for our family. It's kind of where we're at.
And you guys grow all your own food and process all of it. And
stop it. I don't live on a farm, my friend. I wish I could. I really have a horrible green thumb, which is, by the way, we have to make an episode so you can teach me the basic method. I want to talk about soil. I want to talk about water. I want to talk about, boxes.
Fire, wind.
Fire, wind, water. Just like Captain Planet. Yes. No, I don't know any of this. I'm telling you, man. I just never have experienced it. I've always
we'll jot that down for a later date in season 2 for sure.
There we go.
But we do have different contexts. We do have different contexts.
But the first thing we're going to say, folks, is it sounds simple, but batch cook. Okay, what do we mean? We mean cook a lot of darn food. If you have a family of 6, like mine, I have 6 people living in my house, including myself, and so we have to make large amounts of food, and doubling that, you're cooking for 12 people and you're saving the leftovers and keeping the stuff in the fridge. Sometimes we'll take whole pots. You left yours on the stove just covered and it was fine, I'm sure, for, 8, 12 hours, whatever. But we'll take the whole pot from the stove after it's cooled off and put the thing in the fridge with the top on it. And it's just fine. Whether we're making a big stew or something like that. So batch cooking, it sounds very basic, but it's something you might not think about. So that's what these tips are.
You've kind of touched on it there, but I think it sounds simple, it sounds basic, and so it's not covered a lot. But I mean, I spent a good portion of my book talking about it, Corey, because a lot of people do it in the way that you do it, which is fine. Like, it's completely fine to say, I'm going to cook enough at dinner so that I have, some for lunch and some for the following day. And, so I'm going to batch cook big meals, or I'm going to batch cook my meal preps, that are going to be simple, single meals. I put it in the fridge and I have them all set up there, which to me is a whole heck of a lot of work. And it kind of sets me up to feel like, I've got to do this or I got to do that. Whereas I prefer and I recommend, and what we do and what I talk about and write about and share is batch cooking your simple starchy staples, batch cooking your staple foods so that you have them cooked and ready to go. And then you're able to have a meal prepared and ready in less than 10 to 15 minutes. So basically we'll cook a big pot of brown rice, let it cool on the countertop, eat some, of course, and then put it in the fridge. We'll cook a big pot of beans, let it cool, put it on the countertop, let it cool, put it in the fridge. We'll cook a big thing of potatoes in the oven, pull them out, let them cool, put them in the fridge. And so instead of necessarily having, 15 meals that my wife and I can eat off of throughout the week, we've got the equivalent of the cooked, ready to go staples so that we don't have to wait 30 minutes for the beans. We don't have to wait 20 minutes for the rice, or we don't have to wait 50 minutes for the potatoes, but we've got those cooked, ready to go. And then we can prepare them, mix them with a few different, spices or seasonings, or just cut up the potatoes and pop them in the air fryer to cook for 5-6 minutes, and then ready to go, dipped in some homemade ketchup or salsa or marinara sauce or whatever you want there. So there's different ways to do it. And that's kind of where we're coming from. But I really like to batch cook those staples and have them on hand. But batch cooking meals is great too.
It's 2 completely different ways to batch cook, and I absolutely love it. I mean, that's perfect. Gosh, man, where do you store all that stuff? Do you have an extra fridge or something?
No, so we have a side-by-side fridge, which actually doesn't necessarily give any extra room. But, so it's just like half of the thing is the fridge, but is the refrigerator, excuse me. So I'm sure someone's going to jump on me there for saying fridge, but what we do is we use our Instant Pot for basically all of it. And maybe this is we can jump into the next, which is using something like an Instant Pot which can really cut down on cooking time. And so what we'll do, Corey, is I'll take my Instant Pot or my electric pressure cooker. You know, it doesn't have to be a brand or anything, but we'll take the Instant Pot. I'll cook that rice in there in a stainless steel insert. Right, I'm going to let it naturally pressure release. I'm going to take the lid off. I'm going to get some pads. I'm going to pull it out, set it on the countertop, let it cool, and then we've actually have these silicone lids that go on top and turn it into a storage device, and then which costs $6. Right, they're very inexpensive, and so we'll cover that once it's cool, and then I'll set that in the fridge, and then we have a extra insert for our Instant Pot, an extra 6-quart stainless steel insert for the Instant Pot. Put the extra one in there, put my beans in there, ready to cook. Once they're done, right, it's release pressure. I'll pull that out, put it on the countertop, let it cool, and then I'll put another silicone lid on there. And so really in the space of, it doesn't take up that much space in the fridge or in the refrigerator. And so I'll put those both in there, and that's kind of what we'll eat off of throughout the week. And you could, of course, always buy a third stainless steel Instant Pot thing. They're pretty inexpensive. What you're basically going to pay less than you're going to pay to go get pots and pans from the grocery store. And then, you know, we've got things like if we wanted to slow cook or different options there, we've got a glass lid instead of the pressure sealing lid, but we do some sauteing in there. And so the Instant Pot is what we would call is a quicker cooking device that is something that we can do a lot with. And so how it can help us get things done or get things prepared is that we can take, instead of 3 or 4 pots and pans, maybe we're sauteing vegetables and vegetable broth in one pan on the stove top, and we're getting our beans or rice, or maybe we're making a rice and bean dish and we want to saute this or that. I can take that Instant Pot, turn it on the saute setting, saute my my garlic, my onions, my peppers. Then I can put in my rice. Then I can put in my beans and kind of cook it all together instead of, say, having to dirty 3 or 4 pans. And then I don't even have to clean that pan out because I can use it to store it in the fridge with that option. So it's just a way we go about it. And it's a dedication to, say, using the Instant Pot. But I think everybody who has one understands that and realizes that having a little bit of that infrastructure in an extra stainless steel or insert and having those silicone lids can really make a difference.
Nice. Yeah, I looked these up right now on, you know, I guess Instant Pot sells them. Do you have the Instant Pot branded ones, the silicone ones?
Yeah.
Okay. So they're like, you know, they're selling for $9 right now, which is interesting. But I mean, 5,000 reviews on these. People are definitely using them. I've never thought of it.
I mean, and we use it every week. So the $9 is well worth it. Yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll have to check that out. And it says 5 and 6 quart. Are there 2 different? I guess there's
6 quart, there's 6 quart, there's 8 quart. I guess there's a 5 quart. So it must work with that too.
I'll have to look and see what I got. Anyways, good.
What's next?
All right. So the next one we're going to talk about, there's might be some controversial views on this, but that's why we're going to say have them on standby. And these are beans, canned beans. Okay. And Gabriel's done a lot of research that he'll share in a second about BPA free and BPA liners and stuff like that. But for me, as a busy family with 3 kids that are starving,
that's a really weird way to say that, Corey.
You know what I mean? At any given time for a dinner, when dinner's around, they
hungry growing children.
These kids say, "I'm starving," right? But they have no idea what they're talking about. And so, yes, I did use that in the incorrect way. But hungry kids that need their food now, right? Bridget can't tell you she's hungry and whine about having food on the table just yet, but trust me, it might come. So anyways, having these, especially like chickpeas for me, having chickpeas on standby are really good, especially if I want to make like a whole food plant-based cookie dough or something along those lines. If I want to put them on top of a salad to just add a little bit of extra protein. So that's why I kind of have the canned beans on standby. And also I'll have black beans on standby as well. And you can do so much with those. I do rinse them, you know, before I use them. I don't know if that matters or not.
Basically, your rinsing technique is going to get rid of a lot of the salt in the cans. Is the reason to do that. Yeah.
The damage has already been done by them kind of being in the can, but at least you know, we're rinsing off that sludge. I feel like there's like some random sludge in there, which is so gross. But you know, I know that in a perfect world, it would be great to soak your beans overnight and then use those. But oftentimes when I decide what we're having for dinner, because of my, you know, kind of on the go mentality, we're thinking of it just probably 30, 40 minutes before, not really planning everything out. And, you know, I mean, that sounds funny as a guy that runs a lean green meal plan, right? But here's the thing. Those are able to be made from start to finish in 15 minutes. And so they're for people that are just like me, that have no idea what to make for dinner. They're not true meal plans in the sense that everything's laid out for you and you don't have to think about a thing. They're those go-to options when you've got hungry kids that need something fast. And so that's where canned beans come in for me. But Gabriel, let's drop some knowledge bombs on them about this.
Well, I do not want to muddy the water here, and I don't want to discourage anyone from using a great resource when it comes to getting into a plant-based diet, adopting a healthy plant-based diet, because, ladies and gentlemen, canned beans used in a recipe that's going to feed your family a healthy whole food plant-based meal are way better than using any vegan processed alternative, any animal-based right? We're talking in levels here, so it's not a bad thing to do.
All right. Hey, everybody. What's going on? Thanks so much for tuning in to the Plant Powered Dad Hour. I want to share my screen and bring you a couple quick things that are resources just for you. So on the right there, you're going to see the Lean Green Meal Plan. And for more information, you can go to the leangreenmealplan.com to learn more about how you can get started on your plant-based journey. And the cool thing is no matter where you're at, if you're just starting off and you want to try some of the meat alternatives out there, or if you want to do a whole food plant-based diet, we try to make it as easy as possible with recipes you can do in 15 minutes or less. And on the left, what do we got, Gabriel?
Well, we have, and you can stop the share screen. You can just show me up here, but we have the Plant-Based Diet for Beginners. You know what? It's a $10 book. It's the book, it's the resource, it's the recipes that I wish I would have had as I was adopting a whole food plant-based diet, losing 100 pounds, regaining my health. And it's the recipe, the information, the book that I wish I would have had as I was helping my family, my parents, my loved ones, family and friends adopt a whole food plant-based diet and regain their health. And so you can check it out on Amazon. It's out there. It's got almost 1,500 reviews, I think, so far. And so it has been properly vetted. Go check it out. And now back to the show. It's just to understand, right? We used to use, and you mentioned a thing of well, I'd rather not soak the beans, and kind of we're at a 30 minutes before it's time to eat is kind of when we're thinking about eating, and we're right there, right? Within the hour, it's like, well, I got to put something together here. Yeah. And so, yes, those beans are helpful and handy, and you can kind of throw things together there. I'll just say this, everybody can do their own research, but when you hear something like BPA free, it doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, great, the companies went out and they got rid of all the harmful noxious chemicals, and now I get to use as much canned foods as I want without having any of the harmful deleterious effects. In reality, what those companies have done is, and what the manufacturers have done, has just found it's called bisphenol A, which is BPA, is basically they've just went out and said, all right, well, instead, if people are going to buy something that says BPA free, then we can use BPA C, or we can use so a bisphenol C, or there's other ones out there, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're any, they're pretty much similar, right? They're going to have those same things. They're still a bisphenol. And so that's just the only thing I'd throw in there. Mm-hmm. If you're really worried about soaking things and you don't have an Instant Pot, here's where you jump in. We used to, when we didn't have an Instant Pot, before we did, this was a game changer in our cooking and in our kind of meal prepping and planning. We used to go buy a ton of beans, which, number one, is kind of expensive. Cheap as a cans of beans are cheap, but they're not as cheap as buying dry, right? They're not nearly as cheap as buying dry. And so before we had the Instant Pot, right, you had to soak it, or you cooked it for like 27 hours on the stovetop, and you had to watch it and baby it. Where now we can take dry beans, put them in the Instant Pot at a 3-to-1 ratio of water to beans, right? If I put 3 cups of beans in there, dry beans, I put 9 cups of water in there, dry, just like that. Pop it on for 30 minutes, let it cook, naturally release, which is going to take around 45 minutes to an hour, right? But with all the coming up time and then the releasing time. But within an hour, we have cooked beans. And so you may say, oh, wow, well, you're not going to have those ready for a meal or this or that in enough time. But if you do that once a week, and instead of just putting 3 cups of black beans in there, you put 6 cups of black beans in there, it's going to fill that whole Instant Pot full. And we let it cool, put it on the countertop. We'll put the silicone lid on it, and then we'll put it in the fridge. And so like you, Corey, would say, oh, great, I got to get a meal ready. I've got the kids talking about like they're starving. We've got, I've got this and I got to do this and that. Let me grab a can of beans, which is fine. I'm 100% okay with it. We were right there. I'm not against it, but I find it much more preferable to say, oh my gosh, the kids are talking about how they're starving and I'm needing this and that. I'm going to open the fridge, pull out my 6 quarts full of cooked black beans or cooked chickpeas that we're planning on going throughout the week. Pull it out, get my my cup measuring scoop, get a cup and a half of cooked black beans, which is the equivalent of a can, and there I'm ready to go. Which in reality, Corey, if you take out the initial cooking time once a week, I got to those beans a lot quicker than you did, unless you've got some sort of super wrist to open that can up. So
it's so true. It's so true. With a little bit of thinking, a little bit of advanced prep work, absolutely save yourself time and, potentially harmful, BPA, BPZ, BPD, BPF, any BP they want to use.
We want to stay away from BP X, Y, and Z pretty much.
Yeah, that's right.
It's
keep your
and you can have a little bit more you just get into the habit of it, right? It's not like you're going to say, I'm going to wake up tomorrow, I'm never cooked with an Instant Pot and get in the habit of doing this. It takes a little bit of time, but once you get used to it, you realize how beneficial it is, and you get to decide. It's hard to find. Like, I can go to our local health food store and get a ton of different types of dry beans. Yeah. I can only get black beans and pinto beans and white beans and red beans at the store, which is fine. You can do everything with those.
That's true.
But you can really find a lot of different you can find kind of better sourced dry beans than you can maybe in cans, and you can get a lot more different types of organic beans that you could cook in the Instant Pot. So there's just more options there, but we really like to stay in the mode of kind of batch cooking those beans. So like you, when we need them, we have them on hand in a cooked, ready to go fashion. And I'll just say this, if you're someone that says, well, that one Instant Pot, this or that, or I'd rather, you can actually take those beans once they're cooked and cooled, remove most of the liquid, put them in a freezer safe container, pop them in your freezer, and then you can take those out. Now you'll need to thaw them and you'll need to go through those 9 yards, but there's a lot of different options there. But we like to cook a week's worth, put it in the fridge.
Well, I'm going to tell you folks, we started off this episode by saying we're going to have 10 tips, but I'm not going to fly through the 7 others that we have for you. Here's what we're going to do. This is going to be part 1. All right. And then part 2 is going to be next week's episode, because these are too valuable and we both have things to say about these things, and there's no way we're going to get through it. Okay. So instead of this being a double long show or whatever, we're going to get through these next 2 and we're going to elaborate on them a little bit. And then the next episode, make sure you go check that one out, because we're going to give you the rest. Okay. So the next one, Gabriel, I think you wanted to hit was, I really like this one. Talk about the quick cooking staples, and let's go on that together, and especially quinoa, because that is just
and I'll mention this, I'll just say it right here and now, that if I had to pick the 3 things that I'm gonna live off, the 3 staple foods that are kind of in our pantry now, excluding potatoes and sweet potatoes, just because those are maybe not so shelf stable, which they kind of are, but kind of the grains that we'll eat, or the pseudo grains, it's going to be rice. Well, beans are a legume, but rice, beans, and oats, right? Those are going to be those 3. Those aren't necessarily the quickest cooking if you're talking about for a lot of different meal applications. Now, oats, of course, you can pop together rolled oats really quickly. But if you're someone who's, rice takes too long, or, there are quicker cooking grains. And so I just wanted to mention, there's quinoa, there's amaranth, there's a lot of the kind of more the ancient grains, or the smaller grain types. Smaller, they're not quarter size, they're very teeny tiny, but they cook very quickly, like especially something like quinoa. And also your cooking, the way you cook it changes as well, how quickly it's done. But you can really cook quinoa on the stovetop extremely quickly. Or if you're cooking it in the Instant Pot, all you do is you actually set that Instant Pot to 0 or 1, depending on how you like it. It reaches pressure, turns off, and once the pressure is gone, it's cooked. And so
Wow.
that's really how quickly a lot of those things can cook. And, and I mentioned, we've got it, how like the water to grain ratio in the book on page 20 and everything. And you can find them online. It's not rocket science once you get the hang of it. But those quicker cooking grains can be a great option. Maybe you're a family that really relies on rice and beans and those, and potatoes and sweet potatoes, but you might just have some amaranth or some quinoa on hand to say, oh, you know what, things have gotten hectic. I really need to get this going. Do I have something that I can cook to substitute for rice? And I can get it cooked a lot quicker. And hey, look, I've got, a pound of quinoa. So that's just a simple tip.
Yeah. And then my little additions to that would be, think about cooking your quinoa, which can be made in 12 minutes on the stovetop, in veg broth. Okay. To give it a nice little, different taste than just water. Although the taste of quinoa has a great nutty flavor to it, which I really like a lot, and is a complete meal in itself. I mean, it's just full of perfect ancient grain. And then the other one would be try cooking it in pineapple juice. Have you ever tried that?
I have not, but I was kind of introduced to that maybe by you not too long ago, but I don't know. I'll have to give it a try.
It's a good breakfast, breakfast item in place of oatmeal, and really. One
thing to note there is I for a long time didn't like quinoa because of the bitterness. But if you actually go through and rinse it, kind of like you would rice, you kind of rinse it, some of those holes will come off, and that's where you get the bitterness. So.
Nice. Okay. Last one. Let's see which one we want to hit. Let's talk about frozen veggies, not frozen leftovers. We'll save that for another episode. But frozen veggies, guys. What do we mean by frozen veggies? Well, it's quite simple. They're veggies that are frozen in the grocery store, people. So what kind of veggies do we have? Well, I have a vegetable medley at all times. That is corn, green beans, carrots, and peas, I believe. And I can make stir fry in like 5 minutes.
Not many vegetables actually in that. You've got corn, that's a grain. You've got carrots, which are a root.
They call it the vegetable medley.
Hey, perfect.
All right. But then we've got broccoli on standby, broccoli florets. And then trying to think of others. What do you have?
So we have at all times in our freezer, we'll have frozen green beans, frozen Brussels sprouts, frozen broccoli, and frozen sweet peas.
How does frozen Brussels work? How do you cook those?
We will just actually, if we have some brown rice that's kind of cooked and ready to go, on the stovetop with some vegetable broth or water, I'll saute up those I'll kind of reheat those frozen Brussels sprouts. And I like my Brussels sprouts a little bit mushy, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So I'll mix them in with some nutritional yeast, with a little bit of sriracha, a little bit of maple syrup, and then throw in the brown rice, and you've got a really tasty kind of spicy, sweet and spicy mix there. But we like to just have when we go to the grocery store, we're not out looking for 1,000 different types of frozen veggies. It's like, all right, let's get 10 bags of organic frozen sweet peas. Let's get 10 bags of organic frozen, green beans. Let's get 10 bags of organic frozen broccoli, 10 bags of organic frozen Brussels sprouts, because, throughout the week we'll say, all right, well, I'm going to use this, I'm going to use that. And so we don't necessarily go crazy with that aspect of things. And one thing that we are trying to do here on the farm is that we're growing things to kind of subside, so we don't have to buy the green beans at the grocery store. We can grow it at the farm. But one thing you had before we got on, Corey had mentioned was like, so we're going to talk about buying vegetables and then freezing them, which was a great kind of like, which one? Because a lot of people do think of that. You might think, not necessarily you, Corey, but some of our viewers might be newer to this way of kind of eating and thinking about things. But you might go to the grocery store and say, the frozen veggies, I don't want those. Those things are, they're more processed and they're, they've been this and they're just frozen. And why don't I get some? It'd be much better, right, if I went to my organic health food store and bought fresh broccoli, took it home, blanched it, and froze it, right? It's a lot better. But in reality, if you're buying organic to organic, right? If you're going to buy organic and then freeze it compared to just buying or conventional frozen, yeah, there's going to be better. But on the same playing field, when you buy that organic frozen broccoli, what's happened is it's been taken from the field, flash frozen, a lot of times they'll try to do it within 2 hours extremely quickly. I mean, it's ready to go. Take it into the processing, flash freeze, it's in a bag, ready to go. Most of the nutrients are kept intact. Whereas if you were to buy that broccoli at the store, which is great, the organic broccoli at the grocery store, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. But if you take that, chop it up, blanch it, freeze it, what you've done is taken broccoli that on harvestable, kind of on the harvest, post-harvest date, it's at probably 10 to 14 days past the time it was harvested when you're actually processing it, compared to what that the company did, or wherever you buy your frozen vegetables, took it right from the field, flash froze it, bagged it, and it's at your grocery store. And so when you're doing that, you really don't gain anything by freezing and your own, unless you grow it. Then it's a whole nother story.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, I hope that gives you some ideas. We talked about, oh gosh, let's see if I can summarize these. I've got just a dirty list here next to me. Batch cooking. We talked about can be as a standby emergency situation. We talked about quick cooking staples. We talked about frozen veggies, and we talked about the Instant Pot. Next show, we will talk about the next 5 that we have for you. And as always, we encourage you to leave comments. Let us know what you'd like to know about in the show comments. And we'll be happy to put those together. And
let us know if you have some ideas, or you want us to talk about things in future shows. That's really where we get a lot of our inspiration. And that's, if you have some particular questions, we would love to hone in and talk about those on a show. And then also just a little bit of a teaser for next episode, part 2 of our kind of talk here. We're going to talk about creating your own frozen kind of microwavable style of dinner. And it's not going to be the junk that's, that's slapped together and that's made in a laboratory and stuck into a styrofoam thing and put in the freezer section and has some nice little old lady's face on it. So you think it's going to be tasting like homemade, but it's really junk food. We're talking about taking whole food, plant-based, healthy meals and getting them to a point where you can have them in your freezer, ready to go, pop them in the oven, pop them in the microwave, and you've got a healthy, whole food, plant-based meal that has been frozen that's kind of ready to roll for 6 months, for a year. So that's going to be a helpful tip that I think is going to be really beneficial to our listeners next week.
That's right. Tune in, people. We'll see you next week. Same place, same
time.
I was going to say same time, but there's not a time. Just the same place every time.
That's right.
Plant Powered Dad Hour. See you later, folks. Thanks so much.